Well, a very pleasant good morning to our friends and our members. I'm Lynette Holder, Chief Executive Officer of the Small Business Association of Barbados, and it is my pleasure to facilitate this session today. So for those of you who may not be aware, the SBA organizes an information session to help our members appreciate and understand critical points, critical aspects of doing business in Barbados. And since the COVID-19 pandemic, we have actually moved our information sessions to a webinar format. And from all indications and feedback, we get the impression that members are very appreciative of the online methodology being used. So I suspect we're going to maintain this for some time now, call this a lesson learned coming out of COVID, instead of reverting to the face-to-face meeting for our information sessions. Rest assured that as we go through our webinar today, that we will be able to engage, I believe, in rather robust discussion a little later on after the presentation. We'll get the opportunity to entertain your questions, your comments. So as we listen to our presenter today, I'm going to encourage that you jot down your thoughts, jot down your questions, any comments that you may have. And immediately after the presentation, we'll have our question and answer segment. Now, by way of housekeeping, for those who may not be aware, this is going to be facilitated using the chat feature on the Zoom platform. So throughout our presentation today, as I said, I encourage you to jot down your thoughts, jot down your questions and or comments. And after the presentation, you can post them in the chat, or you can post them in the chat even during the presentation. But immediately after the presentation, we will revert to the chat segment of the Zoom platform to entertain your questions and or comments. That means that throughout the session, we'd ask that you ensure your mics are muted, so that we will not have any unnecessary disruptions throughout the presentation. So I'm excited about today's session, colleagues. And one might say, but that's a bit of an oxymoron given the topic that we are discussing today, tsunami preparedness. Why am I excited about it? Because we've not had a session focused on this particular topic in some time. And given all that has been happening relative to climate change, and many may not have realized that there was a tsunami advisory on July 10th this year, with all these things happening, I think that, it is instructive that we take a pause from our traditional business topics and we help our members and our stakeholders have an appreciation for this topic and the seriousness of this topic, actually, to the business sector and to our continuity as a business community, and overall the implications for us as a population and as a country. So based on that, I'm excited about what our presenter is going to share with us today. And at the end of the session, again, we'll ask that you stay on just for about 5 to 7 minutes and that you complete our evaluation form. This helps us to assess your perceptions of the session today. So once again, welcome to this month's members information session, brought to you in the format of a webinar, where we will discuss today tsunami preparedness and look at the implications of climate change. And again, those who may not be aware, our sessions are recorded, and currently this session is being streamed on our Facebook page and also our YouTube channel. And in the event that you miss any aspect of the presentation today, please don't be fearful about that at all. You can go back to our YouTube channel, our SBA TV segment on our website and or our Facebook page, and you can review the presentation thereafter. Okay, so before we get to our presenter this morning, I want to ask you for 30 seconds of your time to listen to this advert from one of our members, Waterman Consulting Inc. Waterman Consulting Inc. has something to share with us this morning. So I draw your attention to the screen just for about 30 seconds. All right, thank you so much. And even that you missed any aspect of that, we'll replay it for you immediately after our presentation today. So this morning, colleagues, we do not have Dr. Brewster, who is the director of the Coastal Zone Management Unit here, but we have someone actually who looks quite like him. So, I was saying to myself, but the photo of Dr. Brewster can actually be used for our presenter today. Many persons may not have recognized that there actually is a change in the presenter. But we have the handsome Mr. Fabian Hinds. He is with us today to share in our session a little bit about him. I'm sure you may want to know. Now, Mr. Hinds has been working in the field of environmental and natural resource management for the past 23 years. And in various capacities within the public and private sectors. Mr. Hinds has worked as a consultant on various projects in the preparation of environmental and social impact assessments in Barbados, Antigua and Barbuda, St. Kitts and Nevis, and in Tortola. Now, recently, in recent memory, Mr. Hinds served in the capacity of co-chair of the task team Tsunami Ready. That's what it is called. Task Team Tsunami Ready committee during the intersessional period between 2021 to 2023. And obviously, having served as co-chair of this committee, we want to hear a little bit about the work that was done there. Additionally, Mr. Hinds was elected vice chair of Tsunami Ready at the recently concluded 16th session of the Intergovernmental Coordination Group for the Tsunami and Other Coastal Hazard Warning Systems for the Caribbean and adjacent regions. So you'll appreciate that he has a wealth of experience addressing this topic of tsunami preparedness. He has also worked briefly at the as a fisheries biologist in the fisheries division and with the technical team at the Center for Resource Management and Environmental Studies at the University of the West Indies. So without any further ado, colleagues, let me introduce Mr. Fabian Hinds. Let me give him a warm SBA welcome to our August webinar to help us understand this topic. Can you really be prepared for a tsunami? Someone said to us on our IG page when we posted our flyer. Is that really possible? And what are the implications coming out of the environment we're in, where climate change is a major concern for the global community? So over to you, Mr. Hinds, to share with us this morning in our August webinar. Welcome and thank you.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Ola. Pleasant good morning to all of you. What I will do this morning I have a presentation. It's a PowerPoint presentation. So I would endeavor to share my screen. Let's see here. Right, can everyone see that?
Yes, we can see the screen. Go right ahead.
Okay, right. So I suggested I'll try to go through with you this morning. Trying to transition screen. All right. All right, so this morning we look at what a tsunami is, sources of tsunamis, the history of tsunami impacts as it relates to Barbados specifically. Many of you may be surprised about that particular one. The tsunami warning systems. I'll say a little bit about Ocean Decade, the tsunami program. We're going to the Tsunami Ready Recognition Program here, right here, that is ongoing in Barbados. The impacts of climate change, and even the relationship between tsunamis and climate change, as far-fetched as it may seem. So what is a tsunami? It is really, the word tsunami is actually a Japanese word. The first part of the word, TSU, actually means harbor. The latter part means waves. So the word tsunami translates to mean harbor wave. And it's really a series of waves, not just one wave, but a series of waves caused by a sudden disturbance of the ocean floor that displaces a large volume of water. And the displacement of water can occur via varying means. You can have either earthquakes that are on the sea, and we all should be familiar with the concept of undersea earthquakes or submarine earthquakes, as they're called, because I know in recent years we have been getting a fair amount of notifications that there have been earthquakes a few kilometers off of Barbados' coastline. And typically many of those, if not all, have been submarine earthquakes. Volcanic eruptions can also trigger earthquakes by two means. You can have landslides in terms of pyroclastic flows, etc., coming down the slopes of the volcano, entering the marine environment, and that massive quantities of material from the volcano can displace large volumes of water, which may result in a tsunami wave. Imagine then if that volcano existed under the ocean, underwater. We all are familiar with Kikimjeni. So Kikimjeni is not too far from us. So if we have a violent undersea volcanic eruption, an event like that can generate tsunami waves, which may come our way. And we know if any of us are familiar with dropping a pebble in a puddle of water, the waves radiate in a circular manner, a series of waves from that point of impact of the pebble. So you could appreciate that those type of risks exist from undersea earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, which can also take the form of landslides or even meteor strikes. Meteor falling from space, lands in our oceans, it can result in a tsunami as well. The historians, the geologists may tell you that meteors would have been responsible for the extinction of the dinosaurs. So you could appreciate how significant an impact a meteor can have. So as I said earlier, they spread outwards, more or less in a radial format in all directions. And if your island or country is in a way, you can be impacted. and they cannot be confused with tidal waves. Many people use the words interchangeably. Tsunamis and tidal waves, they're two different things. Tsunamis are generated by some of those methods which I just described. Tidal waves are generated by the interaction of the gravitational pulls of the sun, the moon, the earth, and so on and so forth. Storm surge and regular ocean waves, those are generated by wind. All right. So the storm surge is a bit more powerful because if you have hurricane force winds, storm force winds, you could appreciate the aggressiveness, the intensity, and the penetration of those waves will have much more of a serious impact on our nearshore and the infrastructure thereon. To go a bit further into the sources of tsunami in terms of the seismic sources, we recently, as 2021, a study was done looking at the vulnerability of the region per se to potential tsunamis generated from a fault not too far from the island chain, as you can see here in this illustration. And each of these rectangles represent potential sources in terms of fault movement that can generate tsunamis. And the modeling done, the modeling studies done, use each of these cells here to demonstrate. So for example, in this area here, this cell, a model was run in terms of if you had massive earthquake on submarine earthquake, and it would generate tsunami wave, how and which direction would that wave propagate relative to Barbados? And you can see clearly here, we will be experiencing anything in the region from 1.5, maybe 1 meter waves. Historically, that is what we would have been having, but it all depends on the intensity of the event. All right. In terms of historical tsunami events, Barbados would have that would have been on record, by the way. We would have had one back in as early as 1751 as the earliest record. You don't know where it came from, and it has been estimated that it would have had 3.6 meters or so of penetration inland, which isn't very significant when you think about it. And all of the other earthquake sources, we've had 2 recorded events in 1755 and then a bit later in 1761, all the way from Lisbon in Portugal. And as you can see here, this is Barbados right here. This is Lisbon, Portugal. And from an earthquake event in those 2 different years, it generated what is called a tele-tsunami. And this is a tsunami that travels a very long distance. It may take a few hours to reach Barbados, but you can see that it eventually reached. But in terms of the run-up of the wave, that was only 1.2 meters or so, almost 2 meters in some instances. We get you across the beach into the coastal road, depending on how the elevation of the land is configured. All right, it's all based on elevation. Later, 1902, volcanic eruption, so St. Vincent. 1939, submarine volcano, Jenny, 1 to 2 meter high waves. And 1969, earthquake associated with Guadeloupe. The point here is that we had these events. It is possible. We have been fortunate enough to only have these approximately 1 to 2 meter or less waves that would not have caused any real significant damage, which is quite unlike what the world would have seen a few years ago as it relates to the Asian tsunami, where you found ships on top of multi-story buildings. Over 200,000 people died in a few minutes. People drowned in their cars, etc., trying to escape, going about their business along the coastal stretch. And then more recently, the Japanese tsunami, which resulted in thousands of people dying as well. So with that in mind, we know we have been touched by tsunamis in these particular years historically. We know the sources of tsunami, be it on the sea fault lines, which can be subject to earthquakes, and on the sea, the submarine volcanoes. So it's incumbent upon us as a nation to be prepared. And this is what we are trying to do. And in preparedness, we also have to be aware of the warning signs, or how can we improve the tsunami warnings that would have a direct input into our level of preparedness and response. In nature, there's that natural alerting system. You understand that from the Asian tsunami, the elephants that were taking tourists for tours on their backs were well aware of what was happening, and they booked it for the hills and took whoever was on their backs with them. And that was that nature's alerting system, warning system. So animals can be quite in tuned to tsunamis, as those nations who have experienced it would know quite well. Tsunamis tend to sound like a freight train coming, a roaring sound. So if you're at the beach and you're hearing that sound and it ain't traffic and it's coming from offshore, you know that something may be up. If you also see the shore, you see retreating seaward, kind of like these cartoon photos that I have here, where 1 minute you see the shoreline is where it is, and then the sea starts to retreat and the sea floor becomes exposed, and you have the benthic organisms there hanging around in the sun. You know something unusual is happening, and it may be a tsunami on its way. And these are the natural cues. If you find yourself on the beach and you're not hearing the radio and you're not getting the alerts via the CAP or the Barbados Met Services app or the WhatsApp messaging blast that will come out to alert you. So these are some of the natural cues. However, from the technological warning perspective, there are over 700 or so tsunami warning systems in place in terms of buoys and stuff like that. We have sea level monitoring stations right here in Barbados as well. We have one that was recently reinstated and made functional, contributing towards the regional network at the Pacific Tsunami Warning Center at Port St. Charles. And that one is now up running, monitoring and sending the information. So there is a region-wide and even the global tsunami monitoring network that is doing that work and monitoring real time and communicating via satellite to the respective tsunami warning centers across the world. And this illustration here, you have the Northeastern Atlantic, Mediterranean, and connected seas tsunami warning and mitigation system, all in green. It covers that bit. You have the Indian Ocean tsunami warning and mitigation system here in blue. And then the one that is relevant to Barbados and the rest of the region, the Pacific Tsunami Warning and Mitigation System. We don't yet have a Caribbean Tsunami Warning Center. We are entirely relying on the Pacific Tsunami Warning Center to detect, process, evaluate, and to issue any legitimate tsunami threats to Barbados. the Barbados Met Service, Meteorological Services, sorry, is that agency responsible for receiving that alert from the Pacific Tsunami Warning Center. And in turn, they then notify the Department of Emergency Management. And then all that response mechanism is triggered from there, involving all the first responders, the Barbados Police Service, Defense Force, the district emergency organizations, the media houses, in terms of communicating with the communities at risk, etc., to get people evacuated from the high risk zone, the tsunami impact zones, and so on and so forth. So in terms of the history now of the implementation of the Tsunami Ready Recognition Program in Barbados, as early as 2001, the U.S. National Weather Service of NOAA, and NOAA being implemented the Tsunami Recognition Program. And it's a kind of trademark logo you can see here. Then in 2011, there was a pilot funding for a pilot study. Tsunami Ready pilot was on the table. This led to the approval of the Tsunami Ready pilot program in 2015, of which our first Tsunami Ready pilot project was done right here in Barbados, in the area of Shermans and Mullings. So if you're in the area of Port St. Charles, Queen Street, it's Stone, down behind Jordan's Mullings area, you will see tsunami signs along the roadway. So in terms of direction signs pointing you away from the coast, up to roads where you can escape to higher ground and away from the shoreline. So that is what those signs in those areas are all about. In the event that if anyone has seen them or were wondering, all right? In 2017, it was United Nations, they declared the Decade of the Ocean, of Ocean Science for Sustainable Development, for the period 2021 to 2030. And then into 2021, the pilot program ceased, okay? And the Tsunami Ready program was actually approved, all right? So in 2021, we had the establishment of UNESCO IOC Tsunami Ready Recognition Program officially the following year. And the hope is that we will have 100% of at-risk communities in every country tsunami ready in terms of its preparedness and response mechanism by the year 2030. It is all about building resilience. We hope that communities can respond to tsunami threats by combining accurate, real-time impact forecasting, which brings in all that technology, the instrumentation, the Pacific Tsunami Warning Center, etc., with deep community preparedness. Tsunami disaster impacts are minimized, enabling rapid restoration of critical infrastructure and services. We would have had a number of town hall meetings, because right now we are trying to get St. James Central from Porters to Holders Hill, and Christchurch West from the Garrison all the way to Rendezvous Hill, declared or approved as tsunami ready as we speak. We're hoping to have the Christchurch site done by September, end of September. And we've been meeting with communities, working with district emergency organizations in order to ensure they have response plans in place. We had the communities practice evacuation exercises during the Carib Wave exercise that happens every year. You know, so a lot of effort has gone into it, but the process has to be iterative. It has to be repetitive because people quickly forget, move on with their lives and businesses. We've been trying to get the high occupancy businesses along the coastline, the hotels, the restaurants that would not only have staff, they will have guests and patrons on their properties at any given time during the day and night. People may be in the bed, sleeping in the shower, you know, at the pool, at the bar, the restaurants, etc., doing their own thing, having their fun. But if a tsunami alert is issued and a response is required, how do you get those people out their rooms, out of their, off the beach, etc.? And we've been trying to get those properties to have site-specific tsunami evacuation protocols in place, or better yet, multi-hazard response plans. You don't want a situation. There was one where they used, during a simulation exercise, their hurricane evacuation plan, no, sorry, fire. And I think the assembly point was on the beach. But in the context of tsunami, they went to the beach. When really you're actually going into the worst possible location, because the hazard is different now. It's no longer fire, it's tsunami. There's a wall of water coming at you. So ideally, you should be moving inland and hopefully at higher elevations. And this is what it's all about. And we hope that you can get, by having businesses involved, by having the staff and the patrons educated and to you capable of using that education as a tool to get themselves customers, the differently able as well. Those hearing impaired may not be able to hear audible alerts. Those visually impaired won't be able to read the text messages, etc. They will need the able-bodied assistance. There may be some people in wheelchairs or on crutches that wouldn't be able to run and head uphill, and that would need the assistance of the community members around them. There'll be those elderly that are in their homes on the coast or within the inundation area. Those will need assistance. This is where the community becomes engaged. This is where the assistance of the district emergency organizations, which can't be everywhere, hence the community involvement, would also be engaged as well, including maybe even the roving response teams. The program and the awarding of the Tsunami Ready recognition is dependent on the satisfaction of 12 important Tsunami Ready indicators, grouped under assessment, preparedness, and response. And we're going to each of these in a bit more detail now. So under assessment, you want tsunami hazard zones to be mapped and approved. So there's an approval mechanism. We could consult with the community, but more importantly, before we even consult with the community, we use the science. We have digital elevation models, which are generated by topography. We flew the island with LiDAR, have a topographic profile of the country. We also did bathymetric surveys, so we also have the topography of the ocean floor. So we have a pretty good idea if you have a tsunami wave based on the elevation of the land. Because you know on the coast, it's pretty low lying, close to sea level. But as you go further inland, the elevation of the land starts to go up, it gets higher. So on this diagram here, this is what we have is the evacuation zone and the tsunami inundation zone based on a worst case scenario is within this zone, this yellow greeny area here. The red arrows are the illustrating this is the garrison area. This is the road we prefer you to take to get out of the tsunami zone. You may find yourself between two evacuation routes. So you pick either left or right, and you make your way to either one of these escape roads here to get out of the inundation zones and to safety. All right, and then you have assembly points in terms of these signs at various locations. But the idea is if you are doing business along the coast, any one of these hotels, the Savannah Hotel, there were some beach houses here, residences, villas, etc., restaurants. You know, the coastline, especially on the west and the south coast, very densely developed area. and you want to get people out of their homes, out of the businesses, out of the supermarkets, wherever you are in this inundation zone, out. This is why we have produced these tsunami evacuation maps, and we are now mounting them on the billboard signs in these tsunami areas, tsunami zones, so that if you're on the road and you're familiarizing yourself with these signs as you do your business, you will be a bit more familiar with the roads you need to take to get out. If for some reason we have a tsunami alert and you're advised to leave the coastal area and get to safety. All right. So the tsunami hazard zones are mapped and designated. The number of people at risk in the tsunami hazard zone is estimated. So using the population census and stuff like that, we have an idea of how many businesses and how many people are in those businesses. You know, when the census officers come around to your home, they want to know how many people live in your home. You know, many people may think this is kind of invasive questions, but when you're looking at those type of questions in a disaster preparedness scenario, all of a sudden, the agencies involved would have this very valuable data to know that in this particular area, we have X amount of people per household, and therefore in that area, we have X amount of people at risk. And we need to deploy all of these resources and stuff like that to get them out to safety, right? And we also need to know how many people are differently abled as well, and to render the necessary assistance to get them out, right? It's also important to know the economic, infrastructural, political, social resources in the area as well. This is important. Next, you have the preparedness. You need easily understood tsunami evacuation maps, one of which you just saw, but this is one that we recently mounted. I think this is in the Garrison area, this is St. Anne's Fort, over here in the Garrison Savannah on the right. So you're going along there, walking, driving, etc. You know, take the time to look at the map. This map was produced in consultation with the community in the Christchurch West area. The parliamentary representative, senior minister, William Duguid, was also actively involved in this process. He was present at the town hall meetings. He was there to engage the community, district emergency organizations, Department of Emergency Management, and us here at the Coastal Zone Management Unit, because it's all about saving lives at the end of the day. Okay, so it is that important. We have any maps, tsunami information is publicly displayed, as it is here on the sign. Outreach and public awareness and education resources are available. We have provided the district emergency organization with pamphlets, brochures, etc. that came all the way from NOAA. And we have been in schools. I'm here today even, talking with you. This is myself. I was here doing a presentation at the Arthur Smith School. On that day, I did 2 presentations, which allowed me to cover every single child and teacher in the school that morning. So I had to do the presentation twice. And believe you me, these children were very knowledgeable. They knew the material, they knew the information, which tells me the efforts of the district emergency organization, along with the teaching staff, have been instrumental towards helping these children to have a wealth of knowledge in terms of tsunamis and the preparedness and the response mechanisms to them. All right, we have had the Tsunami Run initiative, and we have the walkthroughs of the community with district emergency organizations, handing out pamphlets and talking and engaging members of the community. And of course, the all-important carry wave exercise, which actually tests the response mechanism at the national level. It's a multi-agency response involving communities. Some businesses actually volunteer to be part of it. Not all businesses want to disrupt their daily operations and profit margin to get involved, but some do, and I think it's beneficial to those that actually do it, so that if an event, a real serious threat arises, they will be ready and lives will be saved. There won't be no what is going on and we don't know how to do this and that, or running to the beach to take pictures. We don't want that. That's how people lose their lives. All right, we don't want people running for the cars either, because you will have traffic congestion, which happens quite easily here in Barbados and anywhere else in the world. Leave your car and run. All right, that's the overall message that we want to send. In terms of the response mechanism, these are individuals here at the Department of Emergency Management. You have first responders, police, defense force, etc. And then it's a full communication and response mechanism that is engaged. So you have emergency response plans at the community level. This is the cover of one that was done for the Shermans, the Half Moon Fort Shermans area down to Mullings. That was under the pilot project back in 2019. The capacity to manage emergency response operations during a tsunami is in place. So you need to have an operations center in place, etc. The personnel ready to drop whatever they're doing, and man that operations center, have the necessary communications equipment, be it cell phones, radios, etc. Have all parties involved and ready to rock and roll. You need to have redundant and reliable means to timely receive 24-hour official tsunami alerts in place. So if the tsunami, the Pacific Tsunami Warning Center at 2 o'clock in the morning detects that an earthquake has generated a legitimate tsunami threat for the region, including Barbados, that alert is issued in the shortest possible time after that assessment has been done. And it will be sent to the Barbados Meteorological Services. And there will be somebody on hand, even at 1, 2 o'clock in the morning, at that department to receive the message and to take the necessary action in place. You must also have redundant and reliable means to timely disseminate 24-hour official tsunami alerts to the public. That must also be in place. So it's not just enough to receive it around the clock. You must also be able to issue it around the clock. Right? The overarching problem still remains: if you're sleeping dead at night, 1, 2 o'clock in the morning, how do you get you up and alert, especially if you're living on the coast, 2 meters from water? All right. There's been debate about having these audible sirens, like what is it? Well, I think they have them in Hawaii. For example, I remember as a child, when hurricanes, I think were approaching, I remember hearing these loud sirens in the distance. I was told that was one of those hurricane warning systems, but cost has been an issue, but it has something that we've been discussing at the table to see if that is something that can be feasible for us, that may be mounted at certain points around Barbados, that if there's an emergency, the public doesn't always have to depend on cell phones, which we only look at occasionally or when we have the time to do it, or we may not be tuned into our CBC television, or we may not be tuned into the radio station, maybe listening to a CD or something. All right, so you must have redundant means, because people are engaged and listening to different media and using different media formats on any given moment. All right, so this is why we must have multiple ways of reaching people, because people have gone all directions now, especially with today's technology. So to say a few words about the pilot. Back in 2020, Sherman, St. Lucie, Mullins, St. Peter here in Barbados received recognition as being tsunami ready. That was a first, or the first for Barbados. Under the pilot community performance-based tsunami recognition program being implemented by UNESCO IOC Intergovernmental Coordination Group for the tsunami and other coastal hazards warning systems, very long-term for the Caribbean adjacent regions. The recognition program was implemented by the St. Lucie, St. Peter, and St. James District, St. James North specifically, district emergency organizations under the guidance of the Department of Emergency Management and the Coastal Zone Management Unit. I have to say at this point that both the Department of Emergency Management and the Coastal Zone Management Unit serve as co-chairs of the Technical Standing Committee on Coastal Hazards. So we work in tandem, we work together, even at this moment, with the Tsunami Ready Recognition Program to implement these programs sector by sector around the island's coastline. But this particular one is unique because it involves 3 district emergency organizations. The ones we're working on now, presently 2 we're working on now, only involves 1 district emergency organization for each coastal segment, all right? Some of the outputs of that Sherman's, the Mullings recognition program, the early program, you have the creation of the inundation maps and evacuation maps for each community. The maps aren't as informative, I should say, as the ones we have now, but you recognize it was a first, it was a pilot, and we've got our geographic information systems personnel on board. And based on the pilot, we use the pilot to inform how we can do things better. So therefore, the maps that we are generating now, like what you saw on the billboard, we think, are actually a lot more informative and presents the evacuation routes much more clearly. All right, the community also was provided with equipment and signage that I mentioned, all the way from Port St. Charles to going by Schooner Bay, down to Mullings, etc. We have the tsunami signage in place, and even some equipment in terms of bullhorns and stuff like that was put in place. So this is the evacuation route signs pointing you to where you need to go. So at the sign here, it means a road is nearby, point you inland. And the assembly point signs. See some equipment here that was provided. We're actually trying to secure some equipment now for the 2 new district emergency organizations, but that is still a work in progress. So this is one of the maps here from Sherman's all the way down to Mullings. We don't have the inundation zone as clearly defined as you would like, but you know, you can see how far we've come based on what the map I showed you before. So it was a pilot, it was a work in progress, lessons learned, and we've improved on it. So following the Sherman's to Mullings pilot is no longer a pilot, it's official now. In 2022, we launched the Tsunami Ready Recognition Initiative for 2 communities now. As I mentioned, the St. James Central, Porters to Waters Hill. We expect to finish this by the end of this year. Some slight delays, but the more advanced one would be the Christchurch West, which is from Garrison to Rendezvous, Christchurch. Expected to receive its certification by the end of September. And we have officials preparing to leave Barbados and arrive here September 10th. We will have some tsunami training and the ceremony awarding the recognition by the 13th of September.
We have quite a few questions coming in, Mr. Hinds, that we want to get to, so we can have our conversation.
All right.
with our
You need me to
members.
speed up?
Yes, yes, please.
Yeah, okay. All right.
Our wrap up, yes.
Yeah, all right, all right. I will skip through this. All right, so we have the verification process, which I could skip on that. You don't need to go into much detail. All right. All right, so the way forward here, we need to develop relationships with our district emergency organizations and communities. And when I say we, I mean even you, the communities, you, the businesses, etc. It's a collective. Participate in the Tsunami Ready Recognition Program when it comes to your constituency. Develop on-site multi-hazard evacuation plans for your business, especially if it's a high occupancy business. Department of Emergency Management can provide some support with that. Participate actively in the exercise carry wave drills. Even provide some sponsorship for signs, etc. Chauffeur sponsor, they get their logo on one of the signs in the Hastings area. All right, and then now quickly here now to wrap up, we touch on climate change. And climate is different than weather. Climate change is the long-term alteration of temperature and typical weather patterns in any particular place. It is already happening. Don't mind some people for political purposes, especially in the developed polluting world, is saying otherwise. The impacts are real, they're measurable. So ocean acidification is one. The ocean is getting more acidic. Warming oceans is getting warmer. Warming atmospheres, heat waves, etc., more intense. Sea levels are rising, the ice at the poles are melting, and that ice is melting and the water is flowing into the oceans. It's not imagination. Changes in rainfall patterns impacts the human health, ecosystem change, the economic impacts. Just to quickly touch on them, ocean acidification. You've heard of acid rain. Similar principle, carbon dioxide, the massive amounts of carbon dioxide in the air dissolves in the water. You have some carbonic air, and you get carbonic acid. Acid and the calcium carbonate skeletons of corals, mollusks with shells, etc., gets weaker. All right, it's like putting an egg in vinegar, the shell dissolves. All right, so that can spell bad things for fisheries and the fisheries value chain in terms of capturing fish, selling fish at the different levels, fishermen selling to fish vendors, and so on and so forth. Can have an economic impact, and it can impact our food security as a country as well. The ocean's warming, sea level, so if the ice is melting, the ocean is increasing its volume. This is Caroline Bay out there by Boatyard. This beach 40, 50, 60 meters wide. When Hurricane Ivan passed, this is what happened. The entire beach disappeared, right? Under a sea level rise scenario, this can be permanent, right? Corals can bleach when the water gets too warm, and they die, get overgrown with algae, all right? And this is the same site with the beach present. Warming atmospheres can cause droughts. If it's getting hotter, water evaporates. It has impacts on agriculture. And if it has impacts on agriculture, it has impacts on food security as a country. All right. Flooding. But if you have increased evaporation of water, you have increased water in the atmosphere in terms of moisture, which can increase precipitation. So therefore, while evaporation of water from one location can cause drought, that evaporated water can precipitate in a different location, causing flooding elsewhere. And that can have economic spin-offs as well. All right. Impacts to human health. Vectors, if it's warmer, the length of time it takes for mosquito egg to develop into a full adult mosquito that bites you, gives you dengue, it gets shorter. All right. So vector-borne diseases, malnutrition in terms of the droughts and impacts of agriculture, to the vulnerable, the females, children, the elderly, the poor. Okay, these things are real. Ecosystems can change. You're finding warmer water species in the more temperate, colder regions now, because those waters up there that are usually cold are getting warmer. So the range of species have been expanding, which can cause problems for fisheries as well in those parts of the world. All right, spread of exotic species. Sargassum loves warm water that's full of nutrients. So you get massive blooms of it. That has been having an economic impact, especially for those who do business on the coast. All right, very serious thing. So we have been trying to adapt to climate change. We've put sea level rise projections into our work. This is the Richard Hinds Boardwalk. 1.2 kilometers of sea defense structure. It's not just the boardwalk, new beaches, etc. So we totally see that this is KFC right here. And for all those who know and who remember, the sea was right against the car park. But no, we took the sea and put it back here. So vulnerability has been reduced to coastal hazards, storm waves, and sea level rise. This is the picture of KFC before the boardwalk. This is after. This is Welch's near Oistins, across the road from the Inter-American Development Bank, right? That loaned us the $24 million to do the Richard Hinds Boardwalk at cost of $9.2 million, and Welch's, and then the whole thing works. So this is before, this is after. So therefore, vulnerability of this very important artery between Oistins and Bridgetown, vulnerability reduced. Road is protected. Much more of a recreation use value for locals than for the tourism sector. No, more aesthetically pleasing to the work done to the unit here in terms of adapting to climate change. All right, and now finally, lastly, relationship between tsunamis and climate change. The World Economic Forum would have reported that sea level rise increases vulnerability to tsunamis by intensifying tsunami-related flooding. So if tsunamis under normal conditions will cause damage, if you increase the volume of the ocean by the melting of the polar ice caps, and the same tsunami happens, chances are it will reach further inland because there's more water, right? Landslides, turns to the melting of increased rainfall can cause landslides from the slopes of volcanoes, etc. And tsunamis, in terms of generating earthquakes, this may seem a bit far-fetched, but apparently, if by the ice melting and lifting the weight, the tons and tons of weight off of the tectonic plates, it makes it easier for those faults to move, the fault movement and displacement of massive quantities of water via earthquakes at those fault lines, right? So, in a nutshell, that is a summary of some of the work that we would have done, and as Dr. Holder would have asked at the beginning, in terms of the task team, Tsunami Ready, that was a regional body. Myself, it was the other co-chair was a guy from France, and he was representing the French Caribbean territories. We've had people from the other islands as well, looking at how we can evaluate the effectiveness of those 12 tsunami guidelines criteria as it's implemented in probably 14 other Caribbean countries. And as vice chair now, having completed my work under the task team, Tsunami Ready, we're now gearing up now to see how we could proceed with the actual evaluation and assisting the Caribbean Tsunami Information Center with its work, etc. So I'm now willing and ready to take any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you too, Mr. Hinds. This has been a wealth of information this morning. And I'm sure that our members and partners on the call are excited about the next segment, which is our Q&A, because we have quite a few questions. Now, the truth is, we are at 12 noon, which is the usual time for closing our webinar, but we must have that Q&A segment. So I'm going to ask our colleagues and our presenters to stay with us a few more minutes. Let's get some questions in. So please jot your questions in the chat. Let's hear from Waterman Consulting for 30 seconds, and then we'll get to the Q&A segment. Mr. Hinds, I believe I have about 8 to 10 questions already.
Sure, go ahead.
So as long as you have the time, we have the questions to pose. So let's hear from Waterman Consultant, and then we'll come back to our Q&A segment. So 30 seconds for this advert from one of our members.
Okay.
All right. We hope that you found that information from Waterman Consulting rather interesting, and that you can maybe find an opportunity to give them a call or make contact with that business. So, Mr. Hinds, this is a lot of information you talk about sharing in a nutshell. I mean, this was not a nutshell. This seemed like the whole farm, in my view. This is a lot of information that you share. Now you gave a map. You told us about the topographical map that was done, that gives an idea of what is the high point. So let's get going. Where can we as Barbadians look to as that first high point that you may want to get to, especially given that the majority of us are working along not only the coast but here in Bridgetown, and the environment. So what is that first high point that we ought to be trying to get to in the event that there's a warning?
Yes, thanks, Dr. Hall. That is a question I hear quite often, but as you may realize from the map, it's not a straight line. It's a kind of undulating line, depending, because not every place is at the same elevation. So one, if you become familiar with the maps that are posted publicly on those signs, it will give you an appreciation relative to where you are. But the most important thing is that once you are issued with the alert, with the warning, go immediately as far inland and as high as possible. Don't look for no, say, or I 30 meters, or 20 feet above sea level. We ain't got no measuring tape out there at that time. Just go. You do not plastic bag. So you got a jingle, tsunami jingle. When you hear the sound, run. When you see, run. Just go. Don't overthink it. There was a guy, one of the community members from St. James Central. You know, he said, he saw on television that he's got like 2-3 hours before the tsunami arrives, right? I think he was thinking about the tele tsunami, like from Lisbon, if it coming from far. So he said he got time to go to the supermarket. I said, no. We were at the St. James Parish Church right there by Folkestone at the town hall meeting. I invited him to consider his location at that time. He's not at home because he said he lives further inland. I said, you're right here at Folkestone by the church. And if we're issued this warning, no, you can't go. If you got a few hours of it from Lisbon, but if it's Kickham Jenny, you may got seconds. These things is moving like 800 kilometers an hour.
Right.
It will outrun your car at top speed. So just go. Don't overthink it. Leave where you're doing, leave your car and run inland and as high as possible.
Now, what I think that question is instructive, to help us appreciate the seriousness. But I recall the very first time the SBA held a session with your department, the Coastal Zone Management Unit. I recall it was shared back then that that first high point for us, especially who work, let's say in Bridgetown and so on, is actually Bank Hall, which there by in the vicinity of the Abundant Life Church. And we actually marvel, but if that's Bank Hall, I mean all of the all of the areas then below Bank Hall really are in that zone.
I honest, but think about it. And put yourself in Broad Street right now. You just left here, Shepherd. You went to buy your pants or something. And everybody put yourself in that position. And you got issue with a warning, your phone went off, the PA system in Care Shepherd, assuming they got their plan, alert all of their customers, the tsunami is coming, you need to evacuate. And you're on foot. I don't think Bank Hall gonna be in your mind. You're going to be looking to get as far out of Bridgetown by foot, whatever means, or if you can't move, you might want to vertically evacuate. Because if you in the Treasury building or something, and you get the top floor, you may got a chance, you see? So they got vertical evacuation if you got high-rise buildings. So this way, I try, the temptation is great, I try to give people things. You may be in Care Shepherd, your sister or brother or uncle may be down by Fisherman's Corner or at the down on Bay Street. And the kerosene down traveling along the coastal road. So you can't, it's a risk in telling people specific points. Just know that as soon as you hear on the radio in the ever, hook and go inland. And you know that as far inland as you go, you can get elevation. This is why I always avoid giving people specifics, because people can dwell on the specifics, assuming that they're going to be in proximity to Bank Hall or in proximity to this. You could be anywhere doing your business in the risk zone.
All right, fair enough. It's a fair point. The second question here, I mean, you talked about the center in the Pacific, and the fact that we don't have one in the region, and that we have to rely on the information coming from the PTWS.
Pacific Tsunami Warning Center.
Correct. We have to rely on that information coming from them because we don't have one in the region to come to the Met Office and then for the Met Office to distribute that information. You know, all that's time. Yeah. So the question really is, you know, how much time do you in the modeling that you did, how much time do you anticipate will elapse, if you will, from when you get that information coming from the Pacific to the region, and therefore the time frame that we would have here in Barbados to act, to respond?
I can only say minutes. And they're actually, because when I went to the meeting in Costa Rica, they're even trying to get it shaved down even more. And this is why it was important for us here in Barbados to get the sea level station up and running again. Because the more instrumentation that is done, the more the technology improves. These people have these cables with the instruments on it stretched all on the ocean floor across through the Atlantic and stuff, you know. And if they keep filling the density of the network, it's kind of like how the Met services have all of these radars, you know, instruments down. So when you hear Sabu say the rain will fall, it is going to fall. So it's kind of like once you improve your monitoring, the quality and the accuracy of your monitoring, you actually shorten the time in terms of starting to issue alerts, because once they pick up the information, somebody has to sit down and process it and assess it and determine whether to issue an actual warning, because you don't want to start an alert unnecessarily and cause panic and so on. So it's something that is not taken lightly, it's not trivial exercise. So
minutes.
Minutes.
As Steve asked the same question here, you know, the time period, you're really talking about minutes. So by the time we get that warning from the Met Office here, or other agencies here, it was received a while ago, maybe from the center in the Pacific. So we really have like minutes. Okay.
My main concern is not necessarily with the time it takes from the Pacific Tsunami Warning Center to Met Services and DN. It is really what happens at the community level, because people can be complacent. You don't want that. You want people to take the threat seriously and to act. That is where the make or break would happen, in my assessment.
Right. So you mentioned that there is maps placed at strategic points around the island, especially the coast. But we have a comment here from Azor that they're not seeing the map, let's say, for the garrison. And is it something that can be accessed online? At least now that persons can maybe familiarize themselves with it. And the one for Oisins as well.
No, we don't forget, I mentioned there's specific areas that we're working on to get the tsunami ready recognition. So the first site would be in the Shermans, the Mullings area. So you will see the signs up there. We've been working on the St. James Central area. That process of trying to achieve the recognition, we're trying to get that done by the end of the year. So the signs will not be erected yet. We have sourced the location of it. We have to negotiate with property owners to get signs on their walls, on their properties, and there's a town planning process as well involved. So you are now seeing signs being installed in the third location, which is the Christchurch West. Between the garrison and Rendezvous Hill, signs are being installed now. So I showed one of the signs, the billboard sign, the map. There are several locations now where you actually see the direction signage, the blue and white sign with the white arrow pointing you away from the coast, telling you which roads to take. So those are being installed. You will not see it in Oistins because that is not one of the tsunami areas, recognition areas as yet.
As yet, right. Okay. All right. I have a couple of questions here from Daniel. Rather interesting. I'll try to read both of them. In what way does the Caribbean region differ from other tsunami-prone areas, and what unique challenges do you think this may pose for our own disaster preparedness and response here in the region?
All right, thank you for the question. FA can answer it this way. Think of Barbados, and not just Barbados, think of it as a small island developing state. One of them where we have a common history in terms of how we were settled from the Amerindians to the colonial system, where all of our towns and town centers have been established: Oistins, Pointstown, Holetown, Bridgetown, all coastal towns with all the economic engines of the country in it, and all the urban sprawl and residential development associated with those towns. So think about it carefully. What makes us special? We're a small one, very little land to retreat to. We're kind of relatively flat, but fortunately, we still got some elevation to retreat to. But if a tsunami devastates our coastal belt, and most infrastructure lies within 2 to 3 kilometers of the coast, the roads, the houses, the businesses, etc., especially in the west and south. Imagine maybe the loss of life, but the economic impact too that it can have, especially on the tourism sector and all those businesses therein. So that, in my mind, that is something to take very seriously. And as I mentioned several times before, we have high occupancy infrastructure on the coast by nature of our tourism being coastal tourism in nature, and all these primary and secondary business spin-offs associated with it. All right, so think of it that way. And even if you live in St. George or St. Thomas, chances are you're going to leave those parishes and work or go to school somewhere near the coast. Or
it's rather interesting though, because this speaks a lot to our development model of the country. The fact that, you know, climate change and it is interesting, because what we've done is that we've placed our economic centers along the coast.
Yes.
You know, yes, you're right. People come in from St. George and St. Philip and St. Thomas and all that, coming on to the coast to work, you know, entertainment, all of this. So all of our economic activity has been more or less placed along the coast, and God forbid there's a disaster. We talk about tsunamis, yes, but you know, we see the same thing with hurricanes and so on. There is some sort of natural disaster. It destroys these areas that we have placed, and based on our development model, we've put our economic centers in these areas. So, and yeah, that's
political centers too. Where do we find parliament? Where do we find government headquarters?
Government part, yes. So, you know, right. Even some may have views about the politicians and so on at this time, but still, yes, right. We so place all of the activity along the coast. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, it's very bad. So you know, yeah, that's how historically it's been developed, because from the time with sugar, trade and agriculture, from port perspectives, importation, exportation, even the importation of slaves, right there at the Constitution River, right? By Pierhead, you know, and Carolina Bay was a natural harbor before we had the Bridgetown port. And you had the schooners transporting stuff between the ships and land. And the development of the towns surrounding that, it just changed from agriculture to tourism, and it expanded from there. You know, but we are small. We have all of our infrastructure on the coast, the lower lying areas. So even think of it in terms of climate change, impacts of hurricanes, the impact, the consequence is always the same, and that vulnerability is
okay. So here's a question from Doril. Can Barbados experience an underwater tsunami? Are there any buoy warning systems currently in the Barbadian waters?
I think the term a tsunami generated from underwater source. So if you have a volcanic eruption of, say, Kikumjeni, or you can have a massive or notable earthquake from one of those fault lines, from the fault line, any area of that fault line, the potential is always there. The challenge is, the closer the source, the less time you have to respond and get out the way. This is why it is almost a moot point in trying to determine how much time you have. So as soon as you get the message, go, because if it's a regional tsunami, you may got minutes to seconds. A distal tsunami or tele tsunami, you may got an hour or two if it came from some part of Europe. But the fact is, once you get the alert, try to get to safety, get your family. I have to also say that there was an example in Japan where some parents lost their lives because the tsunami alert was issued. It was real, tsunami was actually coming. They went to try to get their child from school. But the school had their procedures in place, the evacuation plans, which were tested, and the school got the staff and the students to safety, to the appropriate assembly point. The parents, not trusting or having knowledge of that plan, tried to get to the school, went into the danger zone and died. So it means then that if everybody trusts and has confidence in the system in place, preparedness plans, that the schools like the Arthur Smith School that would practice evacuations and St. James Secondary and stuff, that would have evacuated their students at different points during the Caribbean exercise, parents can trust the schools will do the right thing, get their children up the hill, right? And it means that you yourself now also have to get yourself to safety, so that after the event has finished, you can then be reunited with your loved one. But everybody must do their job to get themselves to safety wherever they are. And that's the best way it can work.
Can one tsunami hit twice? Is that scientifically possible?
don't forget, I mentioned earlier that it's not just, it's a series of waves. So so if you drop a stone in the water, you see ripples in circles going out. So the first wave might hit, then you will have a follow up and a follow up. So this is why when you are at the assembly points, wherever you are, you don't just see a wave hit and then running, because you may see the water outside and then you may get a follow up, a follow through, one or two follow throughs, you see. So you have to wait until the all clear is given, right, before you go, because it's a series of waves, and that's very important to remember.
Right. Well, that answers Doria's question, because she was asking that and asking about the various stages of the tsunami. So, you know, that helps for us to have an appreciation. So we get to that assembly point and we don't move. The thing is, as per plastic bag song, you run inland and get to high point, and you stay there until that all clear is given. Here's another one I thought interesting. Is there any serious displacement of sand coming inland? What will happen to this sand with any movement of the water?
I am assuming beach sand.
Beach sand, sand on the beach.
Yeah, that's always a possibility. Let me give you an example. When Hurricane Ivan passed in 2004, all the Hastings very heavy Richard Haynes boardwalk, before the boardwalk was there, you had a lot of beach sand in the road. All there where you got lanterns and all, no. Even coral, not just sand, you have coral, hard corals in the road too, right? And air conditioning units from, it was champers at the time that got knocked off inside the building, right? It's now called tapas. And the floorboards pushed out from the restaurant there, from the storm surge power of the sea. So if you have this wall of water coming in, it's going to be bringing boats, everything with it. A lot of debris, and even picking up debris from land too and turning it around and stuff like that. That's why you don't want to get caught up in it.
Okay. How soon you project that your unit may have the maps online?
I can't give you a timeline now. We're working on it. There's actually, I'm sorry, there's the Caribbean Tsunami Information Center, their website. There is the International Tsunami Information Center, and they actually have the list of all the countries that are involved with the Tsunami Ready program. And I think some of the maps may be mounted there as well. I just have to verify, because we're still very much going through the process. We have to upload all of our information, maps, etc., to a shared folder so that they can pick it up from overseas, from that shared folder. So that is something in terms of the timeline I will have to verify.
Okay, we have to wrap up now because maybe we're really out of time, but it's such an interesting conversation here. I was hoping, Mr. Hinds, that you would have had the tsunami warning signal here with us today, that we could hear what that signal, what that sound is.
No, I have to say, encourage you to download the Barbados Met Services app, BMS Insights, in the Google Play Store, and the CAP app from the Play Store as well. They issue everything from tsunami, hurricane, Sahara dust warnings, everything there. So trust me, get the app, you got it in your pocket. The BMS app actually talks to your phone in your pocket, and you hear it talking, telling you expect heavy showers.
Yes, yeah, right? I have it on all my devices. So let's encourage all on the call to download that app. Cap. Yes, I have it. It gives a very loud sound.
Loud and
loud and necessary.
Cap also has the capability of interrupting the partner radio station broadcast and to issue warnings to the public. It will shut down the broadcast, whatever the DJ is doing, and Department of Emergency Management will take over and issue the warnings.
Right. So we encourage everyone to get that app. And final comment I want to share from Roseanne Trudeau. Roseanne is the head of the Disabled Association. And you did mention earlier that, you know, you may have persons who are differently able, persons who are visually impaired and so on, and we have to care for them. And she's making an interesting point here. She says that wherever possible, it's important to factor in placement areas that won't be a risk for livestock and agriculture. Yeah, not only financial, political and manufacturing sectors and so on.
Yes,
So I thought that was an interesting point as well.
agreed.
Mm.
Oh, and just to follow through, if she can encourage or add her voice that wherever there are the disabled or differently able, to please let your district emergency organizations know where they are and what their disability is, so that they will have that on record, and that be it a hurricane, whatever, they need to know, and that information will be there to assist in any evacuation or necessary response in a multi-hazard scenario, not just tsunami.
Yeah.
And that's something that we've been asking the communities when we're going to do all the time. Just let the district emergency know, and they will have that on record.
Okay, well, thank you so much. This has been a wealth of information. Today, our August webinar, we're going to place in the chat now for you that link for you to answer just a few short questions as a part of our evaluation exercise. But colleagues, this session today has been brought to you, complements our informational session series, if you will, focusing on topics and areas of discussion that we believe are critical and pertinent to our business sector, our business community. And though it was not the traditional topic that we would address, it is critical for us to have an appreciation that the projections from Mr. Hinds and many of the other scientists is that it's not a matter of if, but when such a disaster may strike our region, may strike our nation, and therefore we have to be prepared as we possibly can be. Yes, we talk a lot about the hurricane season, which starts June 1, and preparedness for that and the association. Do invite the DEM reps to come and talk to us about preparedness for hurricanes. But we are living in a time now, in a season where we must be conscious of the implications for tsunamis, and a tsunami striking us in this part of the world, and we have to, as much as possible, and I say as much as is possible, be prepared. So we hope that you found this session very, very informative, and that if you have not yet downloaded that app, you will do so now. Cap, that's it. It gives you that that alarm. It sends out that alarm. Maybe even have something as simple as a flooding, a flood warning or flood watch. That alarm goes off, and I find it to be very, very instructive in helping us to understand what's going on around us. Because many times we are in our offices, we're busy with our daily routine, not paying attention to what's going on out there, and it sends out that signal to let us know what's happening. So I would encourage you to, if you have not yet downloaded on your device, to do so now. Remember, I said at the beginning that if you miss any aspect of the presentation today, the session is recorded and it's going to be available on our YouTube channel. We ask you to like us on YouTube. We ask you to also follow us on our Facebook page, and you can visit our website in the SBA TV segment a little later on, and you can watch it there as well. But please, colleagues, do not take this stuff for granted. All right. Climate change has brought in a new set of factors, a new set of hazards, if you will, for us to pay attention to. And as was mentioned by Mr. Hinds in the presentation, so much of our business activity, economic activity is on the coast. And therefore, we cannot ignore the implications of climate change, you know, and these factors, and we must do all we can to be prepared. So, Mr. Hinds, your final words to us in the next 30 seconds as we wrap up our session today.
Yes, I would just like to sincerely thank you for inviting the Coastal Zone Management Unit, albeit via Dr. Leah Brewster, for sharing our information with you as part of our education outreach initiative. And I sincerely hope that as we continue with the Tsunami Ready Recognition Program and we come to your area, that you would actively get involved, particularly if your area falls within the coastal zone. And of course, if you have any questions, you know, always ask us a question. You call the Coastal Zone Management Unit or assure personnel at the Department of Emergency Management would have any objections, or your district emergency organization. And I can only bid you all a great day, a safe day, and hopefully we would be hope for the best, but we're prepared for the worst.
Yes, indeed. Hope for the best, prepare for the worst. So thank you once
Yes.
again,
Right,
Mr.
thank you.
Hinds and by extension, Dr. Brewster, for agreeing to partner with us for today's webinar. We look forward to other sessions and other opportunities to network. So as soon as you have that information online, please just let us know here at the Secretariat, and we can shoot out via our email blast to our network to let folks know, here's the information, here's it online, you can download it via this app, etc. So it's all about sharing information to keep our constituents informed about what's happening. So we look forward to that as well. And to our members and partners who've been with us, who stayed the course, as it were. I looked at the numbers. We were at about 56 in persons. You know, you stayed right through the time, even though we exceeded our time. I want to thank you so much today for your attention and your participation. And I hope that you are filling out that evaluation form to let us know your feedback on today's session. So we thank you so much, and we look forward again to having you with us for another in our information session. So once again, thank you so much. God bless you all. Do have a good day, and see you on the next occasion. Thank you again, Mr. Hinds. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.